everyone. So here we are. I'm doing a speed paint of all the chibis of my friends. So if you guys may notice that first we have is Lizzie. If you've watched the video before this, my vlog to Prita Nabata Day 2, you've already seen this chibi along with Viktor's Ryvettes and rhythms. So this is the process of how I made those chibis along with mine, the one you see on my intro and outro. So I actually forgot to film the start of this, so her hair was already there, but not to worry, for the rest of the other chibis, I got it mostly on film. Because sometimes there will be pop-ups that I have to start recording and then I forget to record again, but you mostly see the process. So basically, I'm using Ibis Paint X here. It's a free program, really accessible. I drew this on my tablet, my Huawei MatePad 11.5S, and I'm using the stylus that it came with. I'm using the felt tip pen, mostly on the size 49. I just adjust the end if I want to have pointier tips. And here I am resizing the canvas because I will be doing something later that I need more space so it doesn't look too cramped. Since this is a face chibi that I'll be using for icons and to cover their faces for those who don't want to be seen, I'm making it more symmetrical. It doesn't need to be overly detailed, so I'm using a very useful tool here called the symmetrical ruler. You'll be able to see it in the pointy finger over there, and you can just turn it on. Since it's just chibi and won't be overly detailed, that is how I'll be doing this for most of the chibis, except for those who have hair that are like more specific, and I can't use the ruler. So here now, if you may notice, I'm not drawing the usual pupils. I took inspiration from Genshin Impact, so all of the chibis you'll be able to see, they have their own irises. They have different shape eyes. They have different eye shapes and different irises reflecting on their characters. Now I'm almost done with Lizzie. I'm now using cell shading since again it's not overly detailed and I'm not going to render it as much, but I also would like to take note that I will be going back on Lizzie. I will make her hair more detailed as this was the first one I made, so I wasn't like used to this art style yet. I'm still wrapping myself around this kind of style. I'll be going back to her icon because the difference in detail between her and the other icons that we'll be having in the future was much more stark than I wanted. Because as you will see for my icon at the end, it was very much more detailed and I wanted to balance it all out so it all looks like it's the same part of a set. Now we're on to Ryvette, in which he requested to have messy hair. I actually had a hard time doing that. As you can see, it took me far much more longer than I did Lizzie's, because how are you supposed to do a messy hair on a chibi and still make it look cute? Yeah, it was. The drawing was also messy too, honestly. The layers were all blending into each other. I didn't realize that I could just, lower the opacity of the other layer so it's easier to see, but yeah, that's what I did. So here I'm just messing around, making the lines look much more cleaner and making it all more consistent. There we go. I'm moving the icon again because I need to have space, and if you can see with Lizzie's outline, that's what I'm talking about. I need more space, more canvas space, so the outline doesn't cut out. the blue one for Lizzie and the purple one for Ryvette. As you can see, I'm using a different eye shape again because she requested a fox eye, and the eye shapes will be different for each icon. There we go. I'm using the technique of I'm cutting out where the hair and the eyes meet, so it's easier to see and differentiate. But I thought I'll be doing this for the rest of the icons. I actually don't. Some icons, I thought the design would apply better if I just covered the eye or I covered the hair, like that in general. So I'm using actually the bucket tool sometimes here, but since if you notice the lines aren't closed, I would have to close the line with the skin color on the skin layer. There we go. I'm just cleaning up the lines a little bit more since I changed the line art color for the face. And here I forgot she requested to have an earring, so I'm adding it last minute. There we go. I'm also changing the color of the line art of the earring to make it pop out more. There we go. I finally realized that I can just change the opacity of the layers to make it easier to see. After this is when I start the process of coloring and shading. Here I'm first of all highlighting with using the airbrush around the face. I'm using color close to your skin tone. See, this is a pattern that you will notice. I keep forgetting the blush, so I keep going back and adding the blush very last minute because I keep forgetting to put it in. And there we go. Here's the art style that I'm going for the pupils. I still wanted to make it a bit more consistent, though the shapes aren't the same. So the shading is what I made the same for all of the eyes. So darker for the inner pupil, like the inside, so dark to light, then light to dark, and the actual, what do you call that, actual pupil, iris, is like that. So I'll be using this as a reference for most of the icons that I'll be using in the future. So there, I shaded around the face, and then the hair using airbrush and cell shading to make it more fluid. And there we go. Now we're almost at the end. I will walk you through on what I did with the outline. First, I set a layer from the folder, and from the filters there's an outline that you can choose, and that is what I used. Next, we're on to Viktor. For him, he just requested that the normal hair that I like on him, if that makes sense. So messy, formal, like that. If you notice, I didn't use the symmetry ruler for him and Ryvette because their hairstyles are a bit more messy, more natural-like. But I will be going back to the symmetry ruler later because it makes your life so much easier if your face is symmetrical and your canvas is in the middle. There we go. I'm just cleaning up the lines again. I'm trying to balance the look between messy but so formal. If you will notice, I'm using a lot of references because, guys, the references are there for you. Just use them. So I asked all my friends to send me references because I will not make my life so much harder by assuming I need help. Asking for help is okay. So there we go. That's what I was talking about, where I chose to cover the eye. Since if you notice that if I didn't cover the eye, it looked less good, like the hairstyle was messed up. So that's why I just chose to cover the eye instead of covering the hair. And there we go. He actually asked Lucas from Who Made Me a Princess for his reference. So if it's reminiscent to you guys, that's why Also, if you notice, it kind of messed up because I forgot he asked for fangs, so I added that last minute. He also asked for red highlights in his hair, in which I also probably almost forgot. Again, there we go, adding the blush last minute because I keep forgetting to put it in. And if you'll notice at the end of this, I forget one important thing to the rest of all the icons. I think I forgot it for like 5 icons that I made that I will have to go back, but I'll talk about it later when we're already there. There we go, the red highlights that he asked for. This will actually inspire me for my own icon later on. The red highlights, I thought, wow, that's smart. So yeah, there we go, we're almost done. And for his eyes, if you notice, he doesn't have a pupil. That's what he asked because I told him I needed something unique for each of your characters. And he said he wanted like nothing, like those pure blank anime eyes. That's what he asked for. But I still wanted to make his eye shines a little more unique, so I used a sun. There we go, adding in the outline. And now we're on to rhythm. He asked for this icon, so here I am going through it. I think this was one of the easiest hairs that I did aside from Lizzie. No, Rhythm's was definitely easier than Lizzie's because it was very symmetrical. The bangs were easy to do. For Lizzie, she had braids in the hair, so it was a bit more harder since I did the braids by hand. I could have used the braid brushes in Ibis, but I wanted to make the art style look more consistent. Here's the most difficult thing I had for Rhythm's icon. What do I do with the bangs? Like, do I cover it with the eyes or do I cover the eyes with the bangs? And neither looked good, but I ended up going for the eyes covering the bangs instead because I really didn't want to cover the bangs at first since I thought I would lose detail in the hair, but it all went well in the end. I still got the bangs that I wanted. And there we go. I'm now shading around the eyes. So basically, when it's around the face, closer to the face, I'm using a lighter shade that's close to the skin. And then around the edges of the hair, I'm using a darker shade. But I wanted to make the hairs more unique, like a subtle difference. So for Ryvette, who also had black hair, I made it like more grayish. And then for Rhythms, if you can notice here, it's much more warm. And for Rhythm, I actually had a hard time with the eyes. I think this is the most difficult eyes that I made because I did it by hand much more longer. It was more detailed. And I couldn't use a symmetry ruler because it flips and you cannot flip notes or the cheek clef. So yeah, that's what made it harder. His pupil was actually supposed to be a note, but I realized it does not look good, so I settled for the cheek clef instead. And there we go. I'm still using Ryvette as a reference for the eyes because I want to make it more consistent with the shading that I did. And there we go, that is the filter that I use. Stroke, open and close parenthesis, outer, and the filters. Next we have is Eclair. So for her, she's our resident goth in the group, so I wanted to do her justice. I was actually wondering if I'll be able to do her iconic black lipstick, but I realized I couldn't, so it made me much more sad. And if you notice that the references I used here are actually her own art. Yep, she's also an artist. A lot of us in our friend group are artists. Lizzie, Ryvette, Eclair, me, Ryvette Rhythm's a musician. If it wasn't obvious enough. And there we go. I forgot to change the skin line art, so I had to go back shamefully to each and every one that I did. So I had to get rid of the outline that I made and redo it all over again because I added it. What I do is I select a folder and add a layer from the folder is what I do, so I'll be able to do the outline on all of it. There we go. I'm back to Eclair. Oh, I almost forgot. Yeah, Quinche. Quinche is also an artist in our friend group. There we go. And I think one of the funnest pupils in these is actually Eclair's. You will see later why. It's a little bit on the nose with her being goth, but it's nice. It's nice. It's cute. She liked it. It's cute. Also, this is something that I don't know if it's noticeable when all of us are like next to each other, but for all of the icons I use the same skin tone. But for Claire's, I noticed that in her own art she had a much more paler, almost grayish skin tone, so I wanted to translate that also to her own icon. So there we go. I used skulls. Yeah, it's a bit cliche, but hey, it's cute. Yes, I used skulls for the goth girl. Sue me. There we go. And again, I forgot the blush. These skulls are actually, I just got them from a photo from Google, and I just I revised it myself. I recolored, I changed the shape a little bit. So yeah, and then I actually did the blushing differently here for her so it didn't clash with her foundation. There we go, a little bit more shading, and then I'm almost done with her. So for her color, it'll be obvious because her name is already there, which is gray, and there's me. So for mine, this is what I actually said earlier about I was inspired by Viktor's. I got jealous with the red highlights, so I want that too. I want to have that too. That looks fun. So yeah, I gave myself pink highlights. It was actually only supposed to be my, how do you pronounce that? Balayage? Balayage? Correct my pronunciation, please, in the comments, because I don't know how to pronounce it, but that was supposed to be the only design that I'll do. And there we go, I'm going back on Lizzie, because if you notice, the detail on the others were more than hers. So back to the balayage. It's because it's what actually I plan to dye my hair. Currently, my hair is still pure black, but after I get paid, probably I'll dye my hair. Yeah, because I think, I'm not sure yet if I'll post the vlog, but I applied for work and I vlogged my job interview. Not my actual job interview. I think I'll get sued for the NDA, but like on the way to the job interview and yada yada yada. But yeah, I hope I do get it because I need money. I'm broke. Anyways, so yeah, if you noticed, for Lizzie it was stars. For Ryvette it was diamonds, fox, slits. Who was next? Oh my god, I already forgot. I think it was next Viktor. There was blank. And then rhythms is the music, Eclair is the skulls, and then for me, it's the sakuras, in which you'll notice is a big part of my brand. And yeah, there we go. I'm starting with the brown balayage. This hairpins, you call it that. You can see through the reference on what I have. I had a hard time trying to decide how I would color these. I actually made it more detailed somehow, and it just looked nothing like I wanted. See, this is where I start to detail it more, and I even shade the outlines and stuff. And this will be a long part of this video because it was very meticulous and time consuming, only for me to bloop, remove it, erase, undo. But yeah, once I zoom out, you'll see that it's a yikes. It doesn't look good, it doesn't match the art style, it looks very out of place. So I'll be going back to fix that. There we go, that's the balayage, the brown highlights, and the pink. I actually hesitated on keeping the pink because to me, the design looked very busy. But I still kept it in the end. Though I still plan to dye my hair this way. Yeah, so you can look forward to that. I will vlog on me dyeing my hair like that. I'm not sure if I'll dye it Neapolitan because I'll work a corporate job, and I don't think having Neapolitan hair is very formal, so I might not. But during my streams, either I get a wig. I already have lots of wig. What's one more? Either I wear a wig during my streams, or I get extensions that I'll put on every stream. There we go. The sakura eyes. They're very cute. I like the sakuras. There we go. I fixed the pearls in my hair because it was a mess earlier, really. There we go. I started shading it, and then the outline, and we're done. And here's me trying to check each one. And here we are for Quinche, and the next one is Sirin. If you're asking what happened to the order, I asked them to give me what they wanted, and Quinche and Sirin gave it to me 4 or 5 days later, so I couldn't make them at the same time. So Quinche's and Sirin's were a little bit more last minute. So for Quinche, if you notice, if you recognize the reference, that's I think Kim Dokja, if I'm correct. Let me just Google that before I humiliate myself. That is Kim Dokja, right? Yep, that's Kim Dokja. And he asked for horns because that's his first cosplay. There we go. And he asked for spades for his pupils and his highlights. There we go. And then we're just shading again for each of them, and then the outline again. If you noticed, normally I would... Oh, there we go, we're back to Viktor's. That is because he asked for eye bags. He wanted to add eye bags. So there's Sirin. So if you wonder why, at the first ones, their eyes matched their colors of the outline, I wanted to make it much more clear on whose color is whose, because I plan to, when we have group streams where I'm playing with them to make it easier on everyone, I will color subtitles on who's talking, so you guys would easily identify who's speaking, because I noticed when I would watch like group streamers or YouTubers, it's always so much easier when it's color coded and then I know who's talking than not being able to know, because voice identification or correlation is like much more easier when you have a visualization of who it is. There we go. For Sirin, I'm using stars. Actually, I think Sirin has the fanciest eyes because they requested that kind. And then there we go. I'm just cleaning it up a bit. And I'm starting with the skin tone. And I mentioned earlier that I block it out first so I'll be able to use the fill bucket. That's what I was talking about when I first drew the outlines, or like I closed off the open lines so the fill bucket doesn't mess it up or anything. There we go, and we're done. And we have Viktor, we have Rhythm, and then next is Sirin. I forgot the star, so I added it back. So we have Quinche, Lizzie, and then Ryvette, Eclair, and then finally we have me. There we go. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.